Ethan Gray was never the model student, late, distracted, and more interested in video games than textbooks. But on one rainy morning, 30 minutes behind schedule, he stumbled into Professor Kingsley's lecture hall to find 4 impossible math problems scribbled on the board. What seemed like just another daunting homework quickly turned into a battle of wit and perseverance. Little did anyone know, beneath Ethan's carefree facade hid a mind capable of solving puzzles that had baffled experts for decades. This is the story of how a reluctant slacker shocked an entire academic world with a brilliance no one expected. Ethan Gray was the kind of student who never quite fit the mold of academic excellence. Enrolled at the prestigious Westwood University, a place where brilliance was expected and intellectual rigor demanded, Ethan's laid-back demeanor often stood out in stark contrast. Westwood was not just any university. It was a bastion of knowledge, where the brightest minds gathered to push boundaries and chase discoveries. Yet here was Ethan, smart enough to pass, but never quite serious. Enough to shine. Born into a middle-class family in a quiet suburb, Ethan's upbringing was as unremarkable as his approach to school. His father, a retired mechanical engineer, had spent decades designing intricate machinery for a well-known aerospace company. The elder Gray was the embodiment of discipline and precision, qualities he hoped his son would inherit. Ethan's mother was a schoolteacher, gentle but firm, always reminding her son of the value of education and the doors it could open. Despite their best efforts, Ethan preferred the hum of video games and the lure of social gatherings to the quiet study sessions his parents envisioned. Ethan's world was a balancing act between 2 competing forces, the expectations of academia and the pull of his personal interests. On one hand, he understood the importance of his degree and the reputation Westwood carried. On the other, he struggled to find motivation in endless lectures and complicated assignments, often distracted by the latest game releases or weekend plans with friends. His natural intelligence made it easy to skate by, but his procrastination was legendary. He was often the last to submit assignments, and notorious for showing up late, if at all. The halls of Westwood echoed with stories of Ethan's tardiness. Professors sighed in frustration as he slipped quietly into class 20 or 30 minutes late, usually with a sheepish grin or an excuse about the bus schedule. His classmates were equally exasperated. Some admired his carefree charm, others resented the distraction he sometimes caused, but no one doubted that beneath his casual exterior lay a mind capable of more, if only he chose to unlock it. Among the faculty, no one knew this better than Professor Harold Kingsley, a man in his early 60s with sharp eyes and an ever-present furrowed brow. Kingsley was a pillar of Westwood's mathematics department. Stern, no-nonsense, and relentless, he had built his career on challenging students to stretch beyond their limits. His lectures were rigorous, often daunting, filled with problems designed not just to test knowledge, but to ignite creativity and perseverance. For Kingsley, mathematics was more than formulas and theorems. It was a discipline of the mind, a battlefield where only the determined triumphed. Professor Kingsley's reputation preceded him. Stories circulated of students who had thrived under his guidance and those who had crumbled beneath his demanding expectations. Unlike other professors who might indulge tardy students or soften the difficulty of assignments, Kingsley was strict and unyielding. Punctuality was not just a rule, it was a sign of respect for the discipline. The professor's lectures began promptly at the scheduled hour, and any late arrival was met with a sharp glance or a pointed comment. Ethan had had several run-ins with Kingsley before, missed deadlines, late arrivals, and a casual attitude that grated on the professor's sense of order. Yet Kingsley never dismissed Ethan outright. There was something about the young man's spark, an undercurrent of potential waiting to be realized. Still, patience had its limits, and every late arrival chipped away at the goodwill Ethan might have earned. As the new semester unfolded, Ethan found himself caught between worlds. On one side, the expectations of a rigorous program that demanded focus, discipline, and dedication. On the other, the distractions of youth, friendships, late nights, and a restless mind craving freedom. The tension between these forces was palpable, and Ethan's future seemed poised on a knife's edge. This is the story of one rainy morning when Ethan Gray, running late yet again, would walk into Professor Kingsley's lecture hall 30 minutes behind schedule. A day that began like any other would soon spiral into an extraordinary challenge. 4 math problems written boldly on the blackboard, problems no one had solved in decades. What happened next would change Ethan's life, the reputation of the university, and perhaps the course of mathematics itself. But for now, Ethan was just a student, slipping quietly into a seat, unaware that his world was about to shift forever. The rain pounded steadily against the window pane, a rhythmic tapping that mingled with the buzzing of Ethan Gray's alarm clock. It was already past 8:30 a.m., and Ethan was supposed to be in his advanced mathematics lecture at Westwood University. Instead, he lay tangled in his rumpled sheets, the soft glow of his gaming monitor still flickering in the darkened room. Last night had slipped away in a blur of digital battles and late-night chats with friends halfway across the world. Artichi, relentless pull of the virtual realm, had conquered his sense of responsibility yet again. With a groan, Ethan rolled over, blinking against the intrusion of morning light. The rain, the time, the lecture, all collided in a wave of panic. 30 minutes late already. He tossed the blankets aside, threw on a hoodie, and scrambled toward the door. The taste of regret was bitter, but it was tempered by the hope that maybe, just maybe, he could slip into class unnoticed. As he dashed through the narrow streets toward the university, water splashed from his worn sneakers and raindrops soaked through his jacket. The familiar route to Westwood felt longer this morning, weighed down by the looming dread of the consequences awaiting him. His mind raced, not just about being late, but about the countless missed opportunities and frustrated warnings from his father. Flashbacks surfaced vividly. Evenings at home when his father, stern but caring, had laid a hand on his shoulder and said, "Ethan, you're smart, but talent means nothing without discipline. Don't waste it." The words echoed now, haunting his steps, his mother's gentle voice urging him to focus, reminding him that every class counted. Yet here he was, running late once again. Bursting through the heavy wooden doors of the mathematics building, Ethan paused to catch his breath. The lecture hall was a few doors down, the muffled sounds of Professor Harold Kingsley's voice already reaching his ears. He glanced down at his watch. 9:32 a.m. The lecture started precisely at 9:00. With a quick inhale, Ethan pushed open the classroom door, hoping to be invisible, but invisibility was not granted. Professor Kingsley, standing at the front beside the blackboard, caught sight of him immediately. His sharp gaze pierced the room like a spotlight. "Mr. Gray," the professor called out, voice clear and commanding, "perhaps you'd care to explain your timeliness today." A hush fell over the classroom. Ethan's cheeks flushed crimson as dozens of eyes turned toward him. He swallowed hard and muttered, "Sorry, Professor Kingsley, I lost track of time." 32 minutes late, Kingsley retorted, his tone cold but not unkind. "Please, find your seat quickly, and do try to respect the schedule in the future." Ethan nodded, ducking his head as he moved toward the far corner of the room. His heart pounded, not just from the run or the embarrassment, but from an inexplicable tightening in his chest, as if something important was waiting for him just beyond reach. His gaze shifted to the blackboard behind the professor. There, written in chalk with precise, elegant handwriting, were 4 math problems, complex, unfamiliar, and daunting. Ethan recognized immediately that these weren't ordinary textbook exercises. Even the best students whispered in the hallways about their difficulty. He hesitated, then copied them down into his notebook as Professor Kingsley began the lecture. His mind was elsewhere, trying to piece together what these problems could mean. Were they homework, practice, or something else entirely? The classroom buzzed softly with murmurs and scribbles. Ethan caught snippets of conversations between classmates. I heard even the grad students can't crack these. They're from one of Professor Kingsley's ongoing research projects. No one solved them for years. Ethan's internal monologue was a jumble of curiosity and unease. Why would the professor give these to us, he wondered, and why are they so hard? Part of him regretted showing up late. Maybe he'd missed critical instructions, an explanation that could help. Another part of him was intrigued, a spark igniting beneath the surface of self-doubt. This was no ordinary assignment. Maybe this was his chance. Professor Kingsley paused, his eyes scanning the room, then said, "These problems are not merely exercises. They represent challenges from my current research, questions that have stumped mathematicians for decades. None of my colleagues have managed to solve them." A ripple of tension passed through the students. Some exchanged nervous glances. Others leaned in, captivated by the gravity of the moment. Ethan's heart hammered louder. This wasn't just homework. It was a test unlike any he had faced before. The professor's voice softened slightly. "I expect you all to approach these with dedication and rigor. I will be available after class to discuss any questions." But for Ethan, the words blurred. He was already lost in thought, staring down the 4 problems, trying to grasp their meaning. The lecture continued, but Ethan's attention wavered. He scribbled notes absent-mindedly, half listening to Professor Kingsley's explanations of abstract theories and formulas. His mind circled back to the problems on the board. Could I solve them? The thought echoed in his mind. As the class ended, students filed out with a mixture of apprehension and excitement. Ethan lingered, gathering his books slowly, trying to push back the swirl of emotions, anxiety, curiosity, and a strange excitement he hadn't felt in a long time. Walking down the hallway, his footsteps echoed in the wet corridors. The rain had eased to a gentle drizzle outside, but inside, Ethan's mind was a storm. "I need to try," he thought. "No one else has solved them, but maybe I can." With the 4 problems etched into his notebook, Ethan left the lecture hall, unaware that this day would mark the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew and change his life forever. The evening sun had long dipped beneath the horizon when Ethan Gray finally closed the door behind him, the soft click echoing through his small apartment. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the scattered glow of street lamps. Yet inside Ethan's modest room, a different kind of storm was brewing, one of numbers, ideas, and relentless questions. He dropped his backpack onto the floor, revealing the worn notebook nestled inside, the one with 4 enigmatic math problems scribbled across its pages. The weight of their complexity pressed on him. Despite his usual habit of postponing work until the last minute, tonight was different. The problems called to him, daring him to unlock their secrets. Ethan pulled up a chair at his desk, its surface cluttered with textbooks, scraps of paper filled with half-solved equations, and a flickering desk lamp that cast long shadows against the wall. He flipped open the notebook, eyes scanning the chalkboard's legacy in his own handwriting. The characters danced before him, dense formulas, abstract variables, and unfamiliar theorems. For hours, Ethan wrestled with the first problem. The initial confusion quickly turned to frustration as he realized that these were not textbook exercises, but puzzles with no clear path forward. He scoured his old notes, flipped through reference books borrowed from the university library, and scoured online forums late into the night. Every avenue seemed to close, but Ethan refused to surrender. A brief phone call to a study group offered little relief. His peers, equally baffled, exchanged guesses and tentative approaches, but something inside Ethan stirred, a growing conviction that the answers lay not in standard methods, but in fresh insight. As the days passed, Ethan's life began to narrow into the confines of his study. The world outside blurred. The laughter of friends at the cafe, the casual calls to hang out, the comforting routine of family dinners, his mother's worried glances as he missed another evening meal, his father's voice, stern but hopeful, reminding him gently to find balance. Flashbacks flickered across Ethan's mind, earlier math classes where he had glimpsed brilliance in a problem but lacked the discipline to pursue it. Those moments of clarity buried beneath layers of procrastination and distraction. Now, faced with these problems, something was different. A fire had ignited. His problem-solving process was no longer mechanical, but creative. He sketched diagrams, broke down each equation into smaller parts, and allowed himself to think unconventionally. Intuition blended with logic. He toyed with ideas others might dismiss. Each night stretched longer, his desk lamp burning bright as the rest of the world drifted to sleep. There were moments of despair, nights when the numbers seemed to mock him, when his mind felt too tired to continue. Thoughts of giving up whispered seductively, but the thought of letting go was unbearable. Ethan wanted to prove to himself, and to everyone else, that he could rise above his past, that the label of slacker did not define him. His health began to suffer. Dark circles formed beneath his eyes. His meals were quick, often skipped. Friends teased him gently about turning into a math hermit. He smiled faintly, aware of the sacrifices but unwilling to relent. Then came the breakthrough. One late night, as the city slept beneath a blanket of fog, Ethan's pen traced the final line of a solution to the first problem. It was elegant, a seamless combination of logic and innovation, a solution that not only answered the question but revealed new patterns previously unseen. The satisfaction was profound. He leaned back, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized. He'd been holding. The complexity that had seemed insurmountable now unraveled before him. Buoyed by success, Ethan tackled the second problem. Days of labor and iteration gave way to a similarly graceful solution. His notebook was filling with fresh ideas, the beauty of mathematics unfolding like a hidden symphony. Yet the last two problems resisted all efforts. They were tougher, tangled in layers of abstraction and complexity that defied traditional approaches. Frustration returned, but so did Ethan's determination. He experimented with methods never before attempted, blending ideas from disparate fields and embracing the unknown. Late nights melted into early mornings. The world became quiet, except for the scratch of his pen and the steady ticking of his clock. Ethan's social life faded into the background. Phone calls went unanswered, invitations declined, family worries deepened, but Ethan was consumed by a singular focus. His journey was solitary, a battle of mind and spirit. Each failure sharpened his resolve. Each small success pushed him further, and all the while the problems on his notebook grew from cryptic puzzles into profound expressions of his potential. The day Ethan Gray finally handed in his notebook to Professor Harold Kingsley was a quiet one. He approached the imposing figure at the front of the lecture hall with a mixture of pride and dread knotted deep in his chest. The weight of those 4 problems seemed heavier than ever, now that the solutions were scrawled on paper, marked by his own uncertain hand. Ethan's fingers trembled slightly as he passed the notebook across the polished desk. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "Here are the solutions, Professor. I did my best." There was an unspoken hope that the professor wouldn't scoff at his efforts or accuse him of guesswork. He had no way of knowing if his work was right or if it was just a lucky guess wrapped in desperation. Professor Kingsley took the notebook without looking up, his eyes fixed on the blackboard where complex graphs awaited the next lecture. "Thank you, Mr. Gray," he said absent-mindedly. "I'll review these soon." The words were both comforting and unsettling. Ethan left the classroom with a mixture of relief and anxiety gnawing at him. Days turned into weeks, and the silence from the mathematics department was deafening. Ethan continued attending classes, but his mind was never truly there. He replayed every calculation, every assumption, every step of his work, second-guessing himself relentlessly. Was it right? Had he missed something fundamental, or was this all a colossal mistake? Among the students, whispers began to swirl. Rumors spread like wildfire in the tight-knit community of Westwood University's math students. "Did you hear?" About Ethan Gray. He turned in those impossible problems. No one's been able to solve them for decades. How could he? He was so late, I doubt the professor even took it seriously. Some peers cast skeptical glances, others were genuinely curious, but no one had seen the professor's response. The uncertainty created an electric tension. One afternoon, while sitting in the campus cafe, Ethan overheard two classmates discussing the problems with a mix of awe and doubt. "It's like he cracked a code no one else could," one said, stirring his coffee nervously. "Yeah, but if that's true, why haven't we heard anything official?" "Maybe it's just luck," the other replied, eyes narrowing. Ethan felt his stomach twist. Was it luck? Was he truly capable? Or was he fooling himself? Then, one rainy morning 2 weeks after submission, Ethan's life changed forever. A formal summons arrived, delivered discreetly to his mailbox, a summons to meet with Dean Margaret Lewis and Professor Kingsley, along with several senior members of the faculty. The message was curt, leaving no hint of the meeting's purpose. Ethan's heart hammered as he stood before the imposing oak doors of the dean's office. The polished brass plaque gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Dean Margaret Lewis. His palms were sweaty and his breath shallow. Inside, the room was filled with stern faces. Dean Lewis sat behind her massive desk, radiating authority. Professor Kingsley stood nearby, his usual stern expression replaced by something unreadable. A hint of respect, perhaps. Two other faculty members sat quietly, eyes fixed on Ethan. The silence was thick and heavy. "Please, have a seat, Mr. Gray," Dean Lewis said, voice calm but firm. Ethan's mind raced. Was this a disciplinary hearing? An accusation of cheating? Had his tardiness finally caught up to him? As he settled into the chair, Kingsley stepped forward, holding Ethan's notebook. "Mr. Gray, I have reviewed your solutions in depth," he began, his voice steady and deliberate. "And I must admit I am astonished." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Astonished," he repeated, voice barely above a whisper. Kingsley nodded slowly. "These problems," he gestured toward the notebook, "are not ordinary assignments. They are research-grade questions, open problems that have baffled mathematicians for decades, including my colleagues and leading experts worldwide." The room seemed to shrink as the gravity of those words settled on Ethan. "You have done more than simply solve homework problems," the professor continued. "You have provided mathematically sound solutions to problems once considered unsolvable." Murmurs rippled among the faculty present. Dean Lewis adjusted her glasses, a look of genuine admiration crossing her features. "This is a remarkable achievement, Mr. Gray, one that deserves recognition rather than reprimand." For a moment, Ethan felt numb. The fear and anxiety that had shadowed him since that late lecture melted into something else. Disbelief, awe, a fragile hope. Professor Kingsley placed the notebook on the desk carefully, as if it contained something precious. "I must confess," he said, voice softening, "when you arrived late that day and took down those problems, I assumed you were just another distracted student, unaware of their true difficulty." Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of years of doubt lifting slightly. "But your solutions," Kingsley continued, "demonstrate not just intelligence but insight and creativity. Your approach reveals an original mind at work, a rare gift." Dean Lewis nodded. "We have reviewed your work extensively. You will be invited to present your findings at the upcoming faculty symposium. Your achievement has brought great honor to Westwood University." The senior faculty members exchanged approving glances. One leaned forward, eyes twinkling with excitement. "Mr. Gray, your work may well open new avenues in mathematical research. We look forward to your continued contributions." Ethan sat back, overwhelmed by the unexpected praise. The slacker, the latecomer, the distracted student, suddenly transformed into a symbol of brilliance and potential. As the meeting concluded, Dean Lewis extended a hand. "Congratulations, Ethan. This is only the beginning." Outside the office, Ethan's legs felt unsteady. The campus seemed different, brighter, charged with possibility. News of his achievement spread quickly, And for the first time, Ethan felt seen not for his tardiness, but for his talent. In the days that followed, students and professors alike approached him with curiosity and respect. Invitations to collaborate poured in. Yet through it all, Ethan remained grounded, humbled by the journey that had brought him here, a journey that began with a simple act of showing up late, a handful of problems on a blackboard, and the courage to try the impossible.